today is how many speakers have been beheaded. Goodness me.
Not enough.
No. Quentin, you ought to know the answer to this, of course. Is it A, 1, B, 4, or C, 7? Yes, who wants to be speaker now? Well, at the end of the show, Quentin will try to give us the correct answer, not the one he'd like. And if you want to send us your comments about any of today's stories, do get emailing to daily.politics@bbc.co.uk and we'll read some of your thoughts out later on in the show.
We will indeed. Now, it was supposed to be a major victory in a long freedom of information campaign, but not since the Blitz has there been such a comprehensive blackout. The Blitz? Beeching? You've got to be over 75 to follow this programme. Anyway, the BBC elves are still working their way through the reams of MPs' expenses details, which have been made public online this morning. But so far, we've discovered very little that we didn't know already. That's because most of the details today have been heavily edited. That's just one of them. Look at that. Not a lot of information on that. And actually, we can do even better or worse than that. How about that? Freedom of information in action. There it is. Transparency. Plenty of black ink throughout these details. It might have caused embarrassment, I guess. These edited documents don't tell us about the duck house, for example, or the moat, or the famous flipping of houses so that you can avoid capital gains tax. Anyway, what's next? Here's Joe with a recap of how we got here.
Well, Andrew, despite today's publication, we've already had a steady procession of often bizarre stories relating to MPs' expenses. Remember the trouser press, the dog food, the bath plug and the loo seats? How could you forget? Well, so far 12 MPs are to stand down at the next election, specifically because of the expenses scandal. A further 7 MPs arguably are standing down for the same reason. One MP, Labour's Ian Gibson, has already stood down, and there'll be a by-election in his constituency this summer. Now, the latest casualty is Treasury Minister Kitty Ussher, who's resigning from government, we heard last night, after being accused of flipping her home to avoid capital gains tax. She's also standing down as an MP at the next election, although she claims this is for family reasons. So far, errant MPs have repaid over £300,000. The crisis has claimed some big scalps, none bigger than the Speaker of the House, Michael Martin, who in his valedictory speech yesterday claimed he was deeply disappointed that MPs had rejected his reform proposals last year. So when will the system be sorted? Well, an independent review by Sir Christopher Kelly began in March and should report before the end of the year. However, in the meantime, the Labour and Tory parties have put in place their own independent scrutiny panels to deliberate on the fate of MPs who might have broken the rules. God help them. Andrew.
Thanks, Joe. We're now joined by Stuart Bell. He sits on the Members' Estimates Committee. It reviews MPs' pay and allowances. Welcome back to the programme. A lot of people will be thinking you'd have been better to publish nothing than publish this. It's just so embarrassing. I mean, this is Anthony Steen's overdue electricity bill. That's all it tells us.
That is absolutely ridiculous. And when we gave instructions to the authorities, the Fees Office, to put these documents out redacted, we said save us from the Daily Mail, because the Daily Mail will
mate, he's sitting beside you.
Take a page like that.
Sure.
And the front page will be what they don't want you to know.
It's the front page of the Standard.
So we gave instructions.
That's true, though, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. That is beyond.
Well, it's your fees office.
Yours,
MP's fees office.
There are 700,000 pieces of paper put into the system today. And that covers 646 MPs, all on computer. So any constituent anywhere in the land can open his computer, can check his MP's expenses, properly edited, properly put down, and all of the information that should be taken out are the names of suppliers, information that deals with security, bank accounts, signatures.
But no one argues that, of course. Obviously, you can't publish somebody's bank account details. No one's arguing that.
That is what was redacted.
The fact is, and contrary to what you were saying at the time, the Daily Telegraph has done this country a huge public service.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. If I may quote Voltaire to you, for some harm,
has he submitted his expenses?
Some harm, great good can come.
Yeah,
and the Telegraph has rendered, although it got its information through theft, the Telegraph has rendered a service, and that service has been accepted by the House.
If you had had your way, of course, we'd have known nothing. You voted against the Freedom of Information Act applying to the House.
Well, we didn't vote against it applying to the House at all. That was never the case. We voted for it to apply to the House. It was brought in by the Labour Minister, Jack Straw, and we supported it. What we did, and you have mentioned it, Joe, we brought forward 18 recommendations last summer, and if Parliament had taken those recommendations, the House of Commons, we would not be in half the pickle we're in today. And the House of Commons acted like King Canute, if we can mix a few metaphors up here, names, and now the tide has overwhelmed them. Now what we're trying to do is to rectify that with an independent authority, with an investigator, and that investigator will have powers.
I understand that, but let's just get established. If the House had had its way, and this great so-called transparency had happened, we would never have been able to tell about flipping, and Katie Usher's just lost her job as a result of that, and so have others. We would never have known what MPs had claimed for and was rejected. Now, to understand an attitude of milking the system, I want to know what they claimed for and was rejected. Why was that redacted?
No, well, you are perfectly right. No one in his right mind in the House of Commons ever imagined that we'd have a situation where at least 50 members of Parliament have repaid against their expenses. No one would imagine, certainly me and other people, that there would be such a thing as flipping. And we are all, as a House, contrite about that. That's why we're trying to repeat it. Now, whatever has gone on, we have still published today 700,000 bits of paper on all MPs' expenses. And if we get away from the blacked out bits, all the members of the public...
It's hard to get away, Stuart Bell, from the blacked out. I mean, why would an overdue electricity bill be blacked out? Anthony Steen, overdue electricity bill, it's all blacked out except for the £678.
I've said to you, that is perfectly ridiculous.
Or George Osborne's mortgage from the Halifax.
Should never have happened.
George Gideon Osborne.
Yeah, but bear in mind that whilst we get over this humour of blacking these things out, the fact is redacted means taking out for security reasons.
I understand that, but as you can see, they've not done...
I would agree with that.
The only winners in this are the people who make the ink for computer printers. Because look at it. I mean, I tried to print out I've got a child who does drawings on the computer. I tried to print it out. It always comes out looking like that. But it's hideous, this, because it just demonstrates that the default setting of British officialdom and of British public life is secrecy.
And not in front of the children. They have no right to know. That's right. That has been the attitude, and this has been forced on you.
I've said to you earlier, Parliament acted last year like King Canute. They did not believe public opinion. We told them I spent 6 months of my parliamentary life putting this together because I knew what the public was saying. The MPs didn't want to know. And it was a misfortune of the highest order that they turned down these proposals. And the Speaker was very clear yesterday. 33 government ministers voted against these proposals, including, as I understand, Kitty Usher. Okay. Now, this is wrong, was wrong, and all we can do is rectify it.
Where do we go from here? Because, I mean, if I was a local newspaper editor, I would be working out who the MPs are in my area.
They are doing it today.
They're doing it already.
Yeah. This story, I would suggest, Quentin, the journalist to journalist, has got legs through the summer.
Over in the press gallery, at the moment, Andrew, there are people poring over things like that, but also slightly less redacted pages. And there are extra people being flown in from head office for this very task. And so it is going to go on, I'm afraid. And it's just that these blithering idiots at the House of Commons haven't realised what was going to hit them in the gob. And it's because they've set up themselves over the years this system of very dubious expenses, and they're now reaping it.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Stuart Bell, thanks for joining us. Yeah. Now, if you want to know how your MP has been spending your money, you can go to the BBC website, which has all the details of MPs' expenses. Joe.
But now to another burning question of the week, if only I knew what it was. So let's talk about the Speaker. You know, the man we've been talking about who stands in a frock, as Andrew's intrigued about, at the end of the House of Commons and shouts a lot. It's not a bad job, though, you know. You get to tell a lot of people off, if you want, including the Prime Minister and David Cameron. Might be one for me. Anyway, let's have a look at the runners and riders. Remember, we showed you the first 4 yesterday, so if you missed that, you've only got yourself to blame.
Everyone's got to be quiet.
I'm Patrick Cormack, Member of Parliament for South Staffordshire. I've been here for 39 years and I'm offering myself as a candidate for the speakership because I believe I can bring experience